Hello again. I still think of the place where I grew up as it used to be, the tour of the late 1960s, early 70s in County Westmeath, because it's a very magical place, and it goes back to my father, my grandfather, even my great grandfather, and they were all a part of it. I'm joined here by Mr. Trampus is here with me. Hello, Trampsy. And that magic used to be something that young people don't get the same sort of opportunities as like I did to experience that. Circumstances had it that I didn't want to be at home, and I used to be out a lot at night. Winter, summer, it didn't matter. I was out. But I remember the nights where there was no knit curtains on my bedroom window. And when the moon was out, oh Lord, it used to light up the whole room. And I was able to get out and climb up on the back of the roof. And I could see the cattle in the field. And when them cattle was sitting in a circle, oh Lord, my heart would pound with excitement, because you see, animals see and hear things much more than we do see and hear. And when they were sitting in a ring like that, I remember I met an old traveller woman down at St. Hughes as well. I met her a few times actually. She was there, and I said to her, I'd never seen her before, but I knew she was there. I said, you're trying to do some healing work for somebody. She just smiled like she never told me what she was doing, but I just knew she was. And I knew she was a kind of a wise woman. And the stories she told me. And I said to her, I told her about Jack Feary's field. I said, did you know, I said, back in I think it was probably the 1930s, I said, the Maloney's, the traveller people, they were very fond of me Uncle Jack, and they put up the money for him to buy that field. And they told him that it was magic, because you see, anyone in Ireland years ago that suffered, they had special gifts. They could see things, and the travelling people, like, they suffered a lot in them days, you know. They've come a long way since that, but back in them days, you know, they were very poor and they were living off the land, but they were very good people. And I told her, I says, the old bogman told me about the way this field he bought for me Uncle Jack, and the way the fairies used to play football in it. And the local tour slashers had a team and they played football in it. And it was often believed that team of footballers, they were so ferocious, or they destroyed other teams from much bigger villages than ours. And they finally got banned, but they reckoned it was the fairies that was coming out of the fort in the next field and taking the souls of the tourmen, because these other teams were turning up and they were laughing at the tourmen working in or playing football in this old cow field. But it was a very special field, I said, and the old bogman told me, I said, how was I going to see these fairies? And what were these fairies? Oh, he said, I'll tell you now, if you want to see the magic. He says, wait for a frosty night. He said, it has to be white frost completely covering the grass. He said, a moonlit night and a calm night, and the cattle have to be sitting in a ring looking outward, because that's when something's happening. He said, they're all protecting each other, they're looking out for each other. And he was right. And he said, lie on your stomach, he said, and just look level, get your eyes level with the field, And he'll say, you'll see hundreds of years of tracks. You'll see the tracks of man-made tracks and animal-made tracks. Cattle, sheep, he said, wildlife and man all go in the same track. He says, and you'll also see the tracks that was made by neither man nor beast. And I did that, and I'll tell you, it is unbelievable to see it. Hundreds of years of passes and tracks everywhere. And he said, that's how you know they were in there. He said, and I was telling her this. She told me a great story. She said to me, you're very strong, she said, but you're coming over here for a reason. She says, your heart is very heavy. And she says, but you will get strong. She said, and you get very strong. She said, and there's a reason, she said, why some people suffer. She said, now years ago, the old people, the word Amadan, the fool, was meant as the arm of God was round people that were slow or a bit simple. They were very protected and more was thought of them. Unfortunately, she said, now that's all changed and there's a lot of bullying goes on and everything. But she said to me, whatever you do, don't become one of them. And I never forgot them words, because I was going down a real wrong road. And she said, I'll tell you a little story. She said, I had a sister. She said, many years ago, when I was probably a little bit older than you. And she said she was a lovely, lovely lady, she said. And she married very young. She said she was 15 when she got married. She said, and she had 2 lovely children, and her husband worked hard as a farm labourer. And to bring in an extra few shillings, she said what she'd do was she'd go round the farmers round rural Offaly, round Croghan, Dangan, Westmeath, Offaly, and ones they'd be too busy to go into Tullamore, and she'd get suits. They might need a suit, they might need a pair of working boots, whatever, and she'd go in, and for a very small, she had often a few pennies extra, but she said they were very good to her. They used to give her duck eggs and honey and wheaten bread to help her feed her children, and that's how she got by, she said. And she was a very, very honest woman. She said, but sadly she died at 21, she said, of tuberculosis. And her husband was heartbroken. He was absolutely heartbroken. And he didn't know what he was going to do to keep going and bring the children up. But he mustered up as best a funeral as he could for her. And the day they buried her, that night, he was cuddled up in their cabin, in the bed, the straw bed in the corner with the 2 children. And suddenly she appeared to him. Oh, Lord God, Bridget, he said, what are you doing out of your grave? He said, well, so soon, what is the trouble? She says, well, she says, my beloved, will you please tell Rosie to meet me tomorrow night? It's news as well. I've something to tell her. I know it's only her I can tell. And then I'll go to me rest in peace. So she disappeared. And then the following night, Rosie went down to the well, and she was walking about. Suddenly she appeared to me. And, she said, my heart lifted. And she goes, what are you doing out of your grave? What is it that has you tormented? Well, now, Rosie, she said, will you go to me cabin? She said, and in the corner where my basket is, she said, there's the waistcoat of a suit for Paddy Maguire. She said, and there's 2 shillings and 6pence in the pocket. That's the change that belongs to him. There's a set of handkerchiefs, she says, for John Green, and could you leave them up to him? She says, and when you do that, she says, then I'll go to me rest. And she said suddenly she started to fade and disappear. I begged her to stay for a few minutes longer. She said, but she didn't. And she says, it's your interpretation of what these fairies are, whether they're in your uncle's field kicking football. She says, and you can visibly see their tracks that they made in that field. She said, or it's the spirit of the dead people close to you that come to you. She says, but you will see both. You know, wasn't that a lovely story? A traveller woman told me that. And I was up in St. Hugh's as well. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And it was just getting dark and the midgets was eating me. And I was putting water on the cuts of my leg. And she never said nothing about it, but she could tell by just looking at me. She said, you're a very strong character. And she said, but don't become like them, whatever you do. And I never forgot them words. And always when my old spirit was down and I was struggling, I thought them words. And I've always thought them people. And it's kept me going to this day. Thanks for listening.